Thank you so much, Jayton, and welcome, a very warm welcome to everybody, wherever you're joining us from today, Dumelang, Sanbanani, and Karibu Sana. Welcome to Africa Day 2024. We are very pleased on behalf of all the partners hosting today. We're very pleased to see you here. And we look forward to engaging with all of you as we commemorate a very special day on the African calendar. The host for our event today, as you will have seen in our communications, is the Wits Business School with the Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment. We have the African Philanthropy Network. We have the Southern African Youth Forum. We have the Mandela Institute for Development Studies. We have the Institution for Justice and Reconciliation. The occasion is very, very important today because we've brought you an exciting lineup of speakers from various parts of the continent to talk about the theme for 2024, which is all about education. How can we go about creating education systems that are fit for the 21st century? And more importantly, how can we develop education systems that are accessible and that offer lifelong learning for all Africans? Many of you are probably familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and goal number 4 in that framework is quality education. So quality education means not only increased literacy rates, it also means having education systems and policies that allow inclusive access to education. So whether you live in a village or you live in a city, whether you live in Johannesburg or you live in Cairo, whether you have access to running water or you don't, you should have access to quality education and ways to develop your skills. Now, many of you are Africans already, so you'll also know that we as Africans have our own way of education and passing information from one generation to another. So we're going to discuss all of these things today, how we can acknowledge Pan-African ways of learning, how we can document those ways so that that knowledge can be passed on to future generations. We're going to be discussing all of this and more. Please make sure that you can access the Q&A function. We encourage you to talk to everyone during our proceedings today, so feel free to post your chats and your comments as well. We also have different speakers that are going to speak to us today from a panel of young people. We have the Chancellor of Wits University, who will also provide the keynote address for us. And we will hear from our partners as well to provide responses and our conclusions and vote of thanks. So without any further ado, let's get into our program. To start us off, we have a performance, African style. We have Calvin Chikurumbike, who plays the marimba. He's not only a marimba player, but he makes these marimbas, and he has managed to teach his own children and other young people how to manufacture marimbas and how to make that performance. So let's hear a special performance from Calvin, who has performed this for us today. Thank you, Jayton. You can play the video for us. And please make sure that you use the chat or the comments to feel free to post throughout. And I'll also ask that all our partners activate their cameras so we can see you. And we move on to that after this performance. Thank you, Jayton.
That is titled Erina. So this song, I'm going to sing it in Shona, but it's speaking about a girl who was sent to a well and was never to be seen again by their parents. So yeah, it's simply storytelling, but that's the story. It's not based on a true story, but it's an imaginary story that I'm going to play. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is...
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful performance from Calvin. As I mentioned, an interesting fact about Calvin is that he makes all of his marimbas and his instrument himself, as in he does it from scratch, and he composes his own music as well. So he's a very talented young man indeed. We will move on with our program. We're going to begin with some opening remarks from the host of our event. So I will kindly ask that all the partners please switch on your cameras so that we can see you. We will begin with a word from the founder and the CEO of the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, Dr. Nkosana Moyo, who is here with us today. Karibu sana, Dr. Moyo. Dr. Nkosana Moyo. We have a couple of Dr. Moyos. Okay, have we lost Dr. Moyo? You are muted, sir. Jayton, if you can assist to unmute Dr. Moyo. Okay. All right. We will come back to Dr. Moyo. We can also move on to Prof. Tim Moriti from the...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's good.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Keratilwe. And thanks to Kelvin for that welcoming music. I am going to leave specific comments about education to our keynote, Dr. Dlamini. I just want to talk more generally about the concept of, I suppose, a living Africa. At the moment, we as Africans are living in a space where we are using labels. We're almost like without substance. So I'm sorry to put it this way. But when you look at our continent, we are the continent that's got the least interaction amongst the citizens of that continent in any dimension you may care to look at. Whether it is travel, or it is trade, or it is investment, all of these dimensions which would build a living reality of Pan-Africanism are at a very low level compared to other parts of the world. And I suppose I don't want to kind of paint a gloomy picture, but I must confess that I personally am disappointed with the way we are going about building these concepts. We write papers, we discuss them, but when it comes to realizing, making it reality and a living reality, we are falling far too short. So my view is that we need all of those of us who believe in Pan-Africanism, because it's the only thing that makes sense for our survival in the current globalized yet balkanized world. Is that a contradiction? No, it's not. We are globalized, but competitiveness is still based on regional cooperation, like the EU and the Americas and the Asians. We as Africans have got 55 countries, but there is very little joined upness about us, which is why, from a mind's perspective, we formed this platform as a Pan-African platform. I personally met with former President Mandela and explained and got his blessing to do it this way and to use his brand to build a platform which we could use to bring together all of us as Africans. But I have to tell you, it is a huge struggle. It's a huge struggle. Even in terms of finding resources, building our own institutions at that level does not seem to be gaining traction. We formed a Pan-African scholarship program to try and almost create, if you like, in our view, leaders of tomorrow or leaders of today going into the future who've got a Pan-African outlook rather than a national outlook, which is why on our scholarship program, you have to study on the continent, but not in your own country, in the hope that you will fall in love and get married, not to your own countrymen, but to other Africans, and begin to, those relationships begin to provide the cement we need to make this concept a living reality, which at the moment it is not. So you will have to excuse me because I am at the moment struggling. I'm struggling to understand us in the light of what is going on in the world, the obvious threats that we face, the basic concept of economies of scale, which we cannot escape. We continue to do things at a level which just does not make sense at all. In terms of the survival of the continent, the future of the young generation, the young demographic that we've got, we are not building a future that makes sense as this continent, which has got massive potential at human capital level, at natural resources level. The resources we have are unmatched, which is why we continuously get bombarded and invaded again and again. The period of colonization is not over. It's only mutated into one form to another form, but we don't seem to be aware and be protective and build our own barriers to protect ourselves and strengthen our ability to push back on all of these forces that threaten to swamp us literally. So my appeal on a day like this is not necessarily to dampen the celebratory spirit, but hopefully to make us wake up to the reality that actually we are not really doing very well. We have not created enough to be celebratory about. But like I said, I would like to leave the education component and how we might go about that to Dr. Dlamini, our keynote, and I don't want to steal a thunder, so to speak. So Keratilwe, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to lay as openly as possible, if you like, my disappointment in terms of where we are and how we're going about building a strong African living continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear, Dr. Moyo. We still have a lot of ground to cover, so to speak. And please do stay with us because we're going to continue this conversation. And please, everybody who's joining us today, you can respond through the comments. You can also respond through the Q&A. We are very happy to see all of you here. I'll now welcome from the Institution of Justice and Reconciliation. We have Prof. Tim Murithi representing the institution. Your remarks and welcome, Prof. Tim, karibu sana.
Asante sana, and I hope you can all hear me clearly. Let me thank all the co-organizers for joining us for this very important commemoration event. Just to say that the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation has been working in this field of education, training, capacity building since 2000, so almost a quarter of a century. And IJR is a Pan-African organization that works with the government, intergovernmental, civil society actors to contribute towards building
now I've got them. But I was going through my mails. You didn't send me
and
those.
inclusive societies. And education is a key component of that kind of the work that we do. We work mostly with communities and governments across Africa, from Zimbabwe, South Africa itself, Zimbabwe, South Sudan, DRC, Eastern DRC, Ethiopia, Central African Republic, Burundi, and we've even worked as far as Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Uganda. And internationally, we've also been engaged with stakeholders in Sri Lanka, South Korea, Thailand, UK, and US. And we have also engaged our continental institutions. You've heard Prof. Moyo's disappointment and the institutions that we have, the African Union, SADC, EAC, IGAD, ICGLR. These are institutions that we need to revive if we are going to be able to advance the cause of peaceful and resilient societies going forward. So IGR has also pioneered the establishment and operation of the South African Reconciliation Barometer for the last 20 years, and this provides public opinion data on the state of reconciliation in South Africa, and it also has received some requests to replicate this in a number of countries, and this has been achieved. In terms of specifically the field of education, IGR has worked extensively in educating for reconciliation for more than 2 decades and runs a number of projects with schools and departments of education to inculcate and introduce this dimension of peace education, which means researching, compiling training manuals, ensuring that these manuals provide multiple narratives in divided communities so that people themselves can use these tools to surface the harm that has transpired in the past and use it as a means to forge peace in our communities. As I begin to conclude, let me just say that we need to place a much stronger emphasis on peace education from a very, primary level to tertiary, to secondary and tertiary education. The disappointment you hear in Prof. Moyo's statement is linked to the fact that we have not been very successful in promoting peace and security in our continent, on our continent, and the key to that is educating for peace. So it's not a surprise that we're not where we are, where we should be, because we're not empowering our citizens and our states to actually solve the disputes amicably. Instead, we spend a lot of our resources fighting, contesting, and seeking to have dominion over others. So in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, I say that peace education must be a central pillar for any of our interventions going forward. And it's one of the pathways for us to get out of the hole that we have, in a sense, dug for ourselves. And so on that basis, I look forward to engaging with colleagues on this very important platform. And I look forward to identifying areas where we can work together going forward to advance our common cause for a more peaceful and prosperous Africa. Asante sana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Tim. Holes that we have dug for ourselves, so to speak. So we have quite a bit to unpack here today, and we will hear. I look forward to the guidance as well that we'll hear from our keynote. So we need to hear now from Prof. Beginkosi Moyo from CAPSI. Is the Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment. He will also be representing the Wits Business School. Asante and karibu sana, Prof. Begi.
Thank you so much, Kira, and nice to see you once again. And we're glad that you are still involved with the school and the center. And so my role is really to welcome everyone on behalf of the school and the center, to all our colleagues, our partners, and those that are collaborating with us. And of course, I would want to start by thanking the Chancellor, Dr. Judy Dlamini, for agreeing to give the keynote. We are really excited, but also honored that our Chancellor could actually give the keynote on this important day where we celebrate Africa Day. But also I want to thank our colleagues from the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, Dr. Nkosana Moyo, not only for what he just said now, but for constantly reminding us, especially through the lens of minds, of the challenges that the African continent faces. And so we really appreciate the collaboration with minds. I haven't seen my long-term friend, Professor Tim Muruti, in a while, and it's glad that IGR is actually collaborating. And as most of us would know, IGR has really been at the center of many of the continental issues, especially as they relate to the African Union. And Dr. Tim Muruti himself has written extensively in all of this. I want to recognize my dear sister, Stigmata Tenga from the Africa Philanthropy Network. We are in the trenches together, my sister. We always meeting almost every now and then. And so thank you so much for the membership that you bring, especially that of the Pan-African philanthropic organizations, who are in many ways picking up the pieces every time our government and our private sector does not do well. Our colleagues from SIOF, the young people of this continent, look forward to leadership from yourselves, but also to inheriting a continent that is peaceful, sustainable, but also ridden off of the guns and the violence that it currently has. I want to thank the other collaborators, Mwanja, who were together with you from the beginning in doing this. And so if I have omitted anyone, my apologies, it's all protocol observed. I just want to leave you with probably one key area, at least from the perspective of us at the school and the center, the importance of really celebrating this year's theme of the African Union focusing on education. We are an educational institution based at the business school, and our hope is that the graduates and the products of the school go on to change and transform the continent for the better, especially from an ethical dimension and transformation. But I want to also link this theme of education, and I think Kira did mention to how it links to the Sustainable Development Goals as well as to the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. But I want to go back a bit and link it to one of the declarations that the African Union made when it was still the OAU in 1975, which is the declaration that was done in Monrovia. And that declaration really guides our work here at the center because it talks about issues of how, as the continent, we could sustain ourselves, how we could depend on each other, but also how we could, work around issues of self-reliance. And I don't think we can really talk about, sustainability of the continent, the development of the continent, its transformation, rid it of issues of violence and the conflicts that it have, unless we pay attention to education, both at the level of basic education, but also at the level of higher education. And so for us as the center and the school, we really pride ourselves and we take seriously the issues of education, but we want to link them back to issues of history, back to issues of Pan-Africanism, especially from the perspective of building sustainability and self-sustenance. So I'm going to end it here and welcome everyone, wishing you the best. Unfortunately, Kira, I'm sure colleagues here have mentioned to you, I am on another full day convening of our partners of another project. So I'll have to graciously ask that I will be excused. I will try to see if I could join once in a while, but I have to go back to close the other meeting. So thank you, everyone, and wishing you the best.
Thank you for that, Prof. Moyo, and also for introducing Dr. Tenga, who will be our next speaker from the African Philanthropy Network. We've worked extensively with Dr. Tenga, and the APN is one of the hosts today. So karibu sana, Dr. Tenga, some remarks from you as well, please. Please unmute.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you, Kira, and thank you everyone who spoke before me. I 100% agree with everything that has been said. And finally, we really need to see ourselves working in more partnership for us to be able to configure and decide what type of learning, what type of long life learning we want to see. Taking a lot of pride to celebrate Africa Day together with everyone else. And wanting to, in addition to what everyone else have said, wanting to welcome everyone who decided to participate, and also urge you all to share your views openly through the chat link and through any other means you can reach out to any of the organizers and share your views, because these type of conversations are very, very important. As my brother Becky mentioned, some of you will call him professor, I'm calling him brother, because we work in brotherhood. APN desires to build a solidarity for collective voice and action around Africa philanthropy. And we would like to believe that Africa philanthropic practices are durable strategy for us to be able to unlock the potential for learning, and especially lifelong learning. There is so much that we can talk about when we normally talk about development and prosperity for all, about the number of goods and services that, and capacity to produce those services and good. However, those goods and services need to save people and are required to make life of people more useful and more fulfilling. We center Africa philanthropy practices that support long-term life learning and capacity enhancement for development in various areas, but again, believing that we need to make sure that everything else that is done is enlarging the freedom and dignity of people. And always we need to come back to people. Liberated people at the purpose of urgency. And we are not there yet. We are not there yet. We are far from reaching there at the Pan-African level. We really need to reach there. We're even far from reaching there as nations. So we really need to try to our level best to reach there. And the purpose for personal liberation should be setting up and centering these people for themselves, because I've never seen that someone is being liberated by another. I think people liberate themselves. And it is the ability of the act deliberately for self-determination and purpose that distinguish us as human beings and animals. So expansion of consciousness is very, very important, and therefore to own our own power over ourselves and over the environment and the society. Ultimately, we may be talking about development and about life, the value of life, long life learning. And the same is very true even for the formal education, much as it is for the informal education. Ideas imparted by learning, released in minds through education, must be liberating ideas. And the skills acquired by learning should be liberating skills. Nothing else can properly be called learning. And on this, we are very long away. We are very far to be able to realize this. Any teaching, which we see a lot of, that induces a slave mentality and a sense of impotency is not education, is not learning. It is an attack on the mind of people. So when considering systems improvement for lifelong learning, let's consider the learning that would help us to cope and to control our lives. I have been very bitter looking back into my life when I was forced to say A for apple, and I've never lived in any environment that would grow apple or even sell apple for that matter. It's only now that we have apples around us, but we had ananasi, and that had really had very negative influence to my way of even visualizing things, being creativity, because I could not draw apple. But if I was told A for ananasi, I would have drawn ananasi very deliberately and very nicely because I know about ananasi. So at the Pan-African level, summarizing and agreeing with everyone else, I believe that we really need to cherish what is ours. And when we say Africa philanthropy practices, it is all that is around us. It is the asset, it is the capacity, it is the network, it is the traditional learning systems that we can grab and put into responding to our urgency. Let's also look into those aspects, because those aspects are ours. Those aspects will leave us with the long life learning. At the same time, it will retain our dignity, and it will help us to innovate and make value of the solutions, and make value and also bring solutions that are closer to us. The continent is big, as my colleague have said. Context is very different from every location to the other. Geographical and infrastructure accessibility is difficult. Cultures and languages are also, dividing us. So let's find ways to continue to working together, but look for what work for us. If we are really talking about prosperity for all, and if we are talking about lifelong learning, it is not about the education in the classroom. It is about ongoing education. I remember our late Nyerere had said there are three major threads in our life, and those threads are still here. And that was a statement when we were gaining so-called independence in invited commas in Tanzania. And that was health, education, and literacy. And it is still here today. I want to thank the organizers for this space. And I would like us to take opportunity to invest everything that we have to remove barriers of learning and create opportunities for those who need and do not have the means to access knowledge and skills they want, for them to have to deliberate themselves. Thank you, Kera, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. That's quite powerful, Dr. Tenga. You can also say A for Asante, isn't it? That could be more comprehensive to the young people. That leads us very nicely into our keynote address. So we are very privileged to have the Chancellor of the University of the Witwatersrand here with us today. She will respond on everything that our panelists have mentioned, and also on the topic of accessible health. She's also the founder of the Female Academic Leaders Fellowship, a nonprofit that she initiated to transform academic leadership and provide opportunities for Black female academics. So she will tell us about all of this and more pertaining to our theme. Welcome, Dr. Dlamini. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Asante sana. Thanks very much, Dr. Kiratile Mokhosi. I want to recognize two people in their absence: our former First Lady, Mrs. Graça Machel, and the Executive Director of the Wits Business School, Prof. Maurice Hadebe. I would also like to acknowledge Professor Pili Moyo, the head of taxi, Dr. Nkosana Moyo, founder and CEO of Minds, Professors Tim Muriti and Cheryl Hendricks from IJR, Dr. Stigmata Tenga, who's just been on the platform from the APN, the panelists that we have today, fellow Africans, good afternoon, habari za mchana, happy Africa Day. It's an honor to say a few words in the limited time that I have. As we celebrate Africa Day, I would like to quote one of the founding fathers of the predecessor to the African Union, the OAU, 61 years ago. I quote, "We must become bigger than we have been, more courageous, greater in spirit, larger in outlook. We must become members of a new race, overcoming petty prejudice, owing our ultimate allegiance, not to our small nations, but to our fellow human beings within the human community. Leadership does not mean domination," close quote. Those were the words of President Emperor Haile Selassie. They are as relevant today as they were then, 61 years ago. I just want to support everything that has been said by Prof. Tim, Prof. Nkosana, Dr. Tenga. Just to come back to what you said, Dr. Nkosana, I saw on the social media a few minutes ago someone saying even the richest man in Africa needs 35 visas to travel in his continent. And that actually encapsulates your frustration about where we are as a continent. I've decided that I'll focus on something along the lines of what Dr. Tenga said, because education starts by knowing who you are and loving yourself and taking pride in who you are. When we look at the core of the African Union's theme for this Africa Day, it's the need for quality lifelong education for a 21st century African through resilient education systems. My starting point for any education of a people is knowing who we are, taking pride in our Africanness, knowing our history, our indigenous knowledge, culture, and languages. As they say, until the lion can tell her story, the hunter will always be the hero. I have a few points that I like sharing about our history as Africans collectively, especially when it comes to education and civilization. Not only is Africa the mother of all humanity, she is also the mother of all languages. The further away from Africa a language is spoken, the fewer distinct sounds or phonemes it has. After analyzing more than 500 languages, Dr. Quentin Atkinson found compelling evidence that they can be traced back to a long-forgotten dialect spoken by our own Stone Age ancestors. Africa has the world's oldest and largest collection of ancient writing systems. The evidence dates to prehistoric times and can be found in multiple regions of the continent. African writing predates Latin, though other people would want to believe otherwise. From proto-writing to hieroglyphic writing to writing with characters and a script, Africa has a rich literary history that has been often ignored. In July 1799, a stone was found in the city of Rosetta, the modern El Rashid, by French soldiers during Napoleon's invasion of Egypt. Rosetta was located on a tributary of the Nile near the Mediterranean coast east of Alexandria. The letters and symbols chiseled into the face of the Rosetta Stone helped scholars crack the code of an ancient Egyptian writing system. The first time I personally laid my eyes on a copy of the Rosetta Stone was in a London museum. Africa's contribution to mathematics and the calendar is evidenced by the Libombo bone found in Libombo Mountains between Eswatini and South Africa, and Ishango bone found in the DRC. The first artwork was found in Africa, in Bomblo's Cave in South Africa, situated on the Southern Cape Coast. Two tiny pieces of engraved ochre are the oldest works of art ever discovered. Scientists say showing the artist in mankind was awakened in Africa at least 77,000 years ago. As a medical doctor, I took a Hippocratic oath in the understanding that Hippocrates was the father of medicine. Thanks to the late Professor Bongani Mawetu Mayosi, I now know who the true father of medicine is, namely Imhotep, who was practicing medicine and writing on the subject 2,200 years before Hippocrates was born. He's generally considered the author of the Edwin Smith Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text, which contains almost 100 anatomical terms and describes 48 injuries and their treatment. He also performed surgery, and he may have also founded the first ever school of medicine in Memphis. The world's first and still operating university is in Morocco. I'm happy to see there's someone from Morocco here. Not Oxford, not Bologna, but Al-Qarawiyyin, founded in 859 AD by a young Muslim woman Fatima Al-Fari. I always like to emphasize this because African women have always led. They might not have been recognized, but it's true that they have led and continue to. It is still functioning today in the Moroccan city of Fez, that is the university. It was a place bursting with knowledge and multiculturalism, even as early as the 9th century. Time doesn't allow me to mention the inventions that came from Africa. I'm sharing this history because you can only connect the dots looking backwards. Put differently, where you come from informs where you are going. Nations are made up of a collection of stories and legends. These stories shape the way we think about ourselves, our country, and our standing in the world. The stories and our history should form part of our education system and told over and over again till we believe in our greatness across generations. My message today is not only about civilization and our greatness, as important as that is, it is also about our power to create the future we want to see in our continent. And education is broader than just the formal education and the informal education. In a resilient education system, it is about being the change that we want to see in our world. Each one of us has the responsibility and the capability to be the change agent that will take us back to the greatness that we once had. That power lies in quality, lifelong education, which enables irreversible systemic change of nations through its people. To be practical, I'll share 2 examples that are close to my heart that in a small way indicate how we can make a small contribution. 10 years ago, my husband and I decided to take an active role in educating an African child. We conducted research over 2 years to find and design the type of education that will prepare 21st century leaders who are rooted in their Africanness, are critical thinkers, lead themselves with integrity that I cannot overemphasize, and are adaptable to change. For the past 8 years, we've been molding future African leaders at Future Nation schools with teachers and parents who believed in the vision, and our learners that start from 18 months to the age to matric. The system we adopt is research intense, problem solving to cultivating critical thinkers. It offers coding and robotics in early childhood. It celebrates academic excellence in all areas from arts to mathematics, with each learner supposed to take core maths as opposed to literacy maths, and a pass mark of no less than 60% in all subjects, because we expect our learners to be excellent, because they have what it takes to be just that. Over the past 3 years, we've been able to produce 100% pass rates with better quality every year. To give an example of some of the research conducted by some of our learners, over the past few months, some of them have researched African indigenous knowledge by way of engaging their family and communities to find out about rites of passage in the African context. They've also researched the complexities of African hair and skin in a world where beauty standards are Western. Their findings will be shared with another school in Kenya through virtual connection. They'll also be posted on a website created by the learners to document and safeguard their research for future FNS generations. Our stories have to be recorded because of our narration, the oral narration of our history. We have lost some of it, but not with the technology on our side. It will never happen again. Coming closer home, when I became Chancellor at Wits, as Kiratilo has already alluded to, it is a ceremonial role with no executive powers, as you know, but as always, every position has a responsibility. You can't say there is no power, because a position allows you to use the power for good. When I conducted the research, it showed me that Black women didn't show up in positions of leadership and professorate at all 26 public universities. So it's not just Wits, it's everywhere else. This led me and other like-minded leaders that I was lucky for them to agree to the cause to form FALF, which stands for Female Academic Leaders Fellowship. FALF seeks to develop a pipeline of Black women leaders to occupy positions of professor, deans, deputy vice chancellors, and vice chancellors. 2024 is our 4th year, and we have 91 fellows in the program, with 2 research chairs that will be launching this year, one at WITS for gender-based violence and femicide, and one at TUT for entrepreneurship and financial inclusion. Those 2 things matter because when you look at gender-based violence, it really is about gender dynamics, and it talks to SDG 5. When you look at how we see ourselves, one thing, political freedom is one thing, but unless we have economic freedom, we will not gain the human dignity we had pre-colonization. So those 2 things matter to me, entrepreneurship and financial inclusion. And we hope that through these research chairs, we'll be able to make a small dent in the lives of our people in the country. The first woman president in the continent, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, advises that the size of your dreams must always exceed your current capacity to achieve them. I do hope the African history will inspire those that had forgotten it, those that didn't know it, and the 2 examples will show you that each one of us can be the change that we want to see. Every positive change matters. No investment is more important than investment in quality, lifelong education in our people, starting with telling them and reminding them of their greatness and who they are. As I conclude, my prayer for each one of us and our continent is that we become bigger than we have been, more courageous, greater in spirit, and larger in outlook. Happy Africa Day. I thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Asante sana, Dr. Dlamini. Some very vital points that you have shared there. The importance of us knowing who we are and accepting who we are as a starting point, and also acknowledging that Africa has been pioneer of education itself, pioneers in medicine, pioneers in architecture, you name it. So the capabilities are definitely there, and there's things that are worth celebrating that we can build upon. We definitely look forward to engaging with you on all the topics that you have mentioned, and also the importance of social innovation, us bringing up initiatives like FALF to try and change some of the social ills that we are seeing within our societies. So taking it upon ourselves to address that. So I would like to move on. We have a short interlude by one of our young people. She has prepared a poem for us today on this topic of education and Africa as well. Her name is Relebohile. She's from Lesotho and from SAYOF, the Southern African Youth Forum, representing the disability cluster. Relebohile, are you here with us? Karibu sana. Relebohile.
Hello.
Yes, we can
you
hear you.
hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't see you.
Okay. All right. Can you see me now?
Yes, we see you looking lovely as always.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that. I don't have a title for my spoken word, but I believe at the end, every person in this room will decide on the title that they want to give. I believe the children are the future. Give them hope, education. Hope is the mirror of the beauty inside. Hope is the mirror of the beauty inside. The gifts and talents. Talents hidden in lack of exposure. Talents hidden in poor quality education. Talents hidden in lack of love, low self-esteem, identity crisis. I believe the children, the youth are the light of the world. Switch on the lights. Give them education. Education, an equalizer, a level crowned for the orphan, a level crowned for a youth with disability, a level crowned for a poverty-stricken child. Education knows no discrimination. It is the key that unlocks dreams. Everyone was born with a dream. It is the genetic makeup of all humanity. Creation groans in anticipation for the manifestation of solution. No more procrastination. Let the medical scientists manifest advanced cancer treatments. Let the green kings and queens manifest climate change solutions. Let the fashion designers manifest unique and outstanding African clothing brand. Just like a morning bird welcomes a new day with a melody, let the musicians birth a new sound that shifts the atmosphere of the continent from poverty to wealth, from conflict to peace. Let the youth manifest. Give them education. Turn the lights on. The youth, the children, our African pride, our heritage. Teachers, arise. Switch the lights on. Let passion lead. Lecturers, arise. Switch the lights on. Produce professionals. Let excellence lead. Mothers, arise. Instill cleanliness, morals, love. Fathers, arise. Teach protection, hard work, finances. The church, arise. Instill godliness. Communities, arise. Teach Ubuntu, the spirit of Africa. Philanthropists, arise, invest in education. Governments, arise, provide innovative and inclusive education. Together, we fulfill the African dream. The African dream. All lights are on. All children and youth have access to quality education. All backgrounds, male and female, the poor, the rich, youth with disabilities. An educated youth is a financially empowered youth. Education breaks the generational curses of poverty. Education stops gender-based violence. Education stops crime. When the mind is educated, when the soul is educated, when the spirit is educated, the continent of Africa will wave corruption goodbye. The continent will wave poverty goodbye. And together we shall sing a new song. Hello, peace. Hello, joy. Hello, prosperity. An educated Africa is our inheritance, the legacy for future generations. Thank you.
Oh my word. Can we please give a round of applause? That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I have a proposed title for you. Africa, arise and turn the lights on.
Yay.
What do you think?
I think it's an
Absolutely.
excellent one. Thank you so much.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you for that, Relebogile, also for leading us into the youth panel discussion, which will respond to our keynote address and all the words that have been shared today. So we call upon some young people. We have firstly Nobukanya Dinisa from Wits Business School. She's with the Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment to kick us off. Nobukanya, what do you think of our topic and everything that has been shared today?
Thank you so much, Dr. Gira. Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. I am quite excited to form part of this conversation today. And just a brief introduction, as Dr. Gira has said, my name is Nokanya. A direct translation of the meaning of my name is the mother of light. And Gira, when you said to the poet that you know, the title that you're proposing is Africa Arise, I immediately saw myself rising to the call. Colleagues, without wasting any further time, I'd like to share the thoughts that I have this afternoon with regards to what has been shared by our previous speakers, and also about the topic itself on building resilient education systems to prepare Africa for opportunities and also to address the challenges that we have. And of great importance, I'd like to start by saying we all know this quote, and I adapted for my own reasons, a quote that says, when an old person dies in Africa, it symbolizes a library that is burning down. And indeed, colleagues, what we've seen over years is that some of the information that our elders had has been cascaded down to future generations. But looking at the current generation and the future that we can see right now, it calls upon each and every one of us to take action in making sure that we integrate some of the gems that we have in our indigenous systems. And echoing the words of Dr. Judy, it's very important that we incorporate and also understand the indigenous knowledge systems into our current education and for futuristic purposes. There's wealth of research around African indigenous medicine and health. There's wealth of research around African indigenous agriculture. And those are some of the things and some of the tools that we could be leveraging today and also in future to make sure that we're well prepared to respond to some of the challenges that Africa finds itself battling with. For example, as part of the KEPSI studies that we are undertaking as the African Philanthropy Master's students, earlier this year, we visited some very well-vested and well-knowledged farmer who leads an organization called the African Marmalade. And what this farmer does, she does a lot of research around African indigenous farming, and she imparts that information to fellow women in the community. And those are some of the education systems that we've grown up seeing as part of our communities. And what we need to do now as the youth currently, we need to invest more in doing research around that and documenting such. Dr. Judy mentioned that we have technology now to make sure that some of the stories that we have today and the stories that we've collected as part of our past are recorded for future purposes. And I echo the same sentiments that for us to connect the dots, we need to look backwards and collect all the gems that Africa has collected over the past number of decades and centuries. I was quite impressed by Dr. Tenga's quote when she said that skills acquired by learning should be liberating. As CAPSI students, one thing that we all agree with, although we debate a lot around the things that we learn, is that as Africa, we can utilize all the information that we have at our disposal around building Pan-Africanism and making sure that we incorporate various themes that we've learned as Africans growing up, phenomena such as Ubuntu. In South Africa, we say Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, I am because you are. And some of the development needs can be addressed through African philanthropy because we know and we understand that I am because you are. And looking at other similar African phenomena such as Harambe and how we integrate that to intergenerational and inclusive learning, as well as other challenges that can be resolved through African ways of conflict resolution. And in closing, colleagues, I'd like to echo the words that have been shared earlier, that it's very important for us to retell the African stories until Africa remembers and recognizes again the greatness that Africa has. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nabukanya. So we look forward to the research that you're going to do on some of everything that you have learned and heard today. All right, we move on to Kamala Dixon. Kamala Dixon, you will notice we have a lot of young people from the Southern African Youth Forum, and that is very intentional because we want to hear from the young people. We have Kamala Dixon, who's representing the Southern African Youth Forum, and he's also in charge of the African heritage systems that they developed there at SIOF. So Karibu Sana, Kamala. We would love to hear your inputs as well on behalf of SIOF.
Asante sana, Doctor, for the chance. I would like to greet everyone in the name of Comrade Aruta Continua. My name is Kamala. I'm from Tanzania. So my seniors who have indicated on the how Africa should embrace education and how Africa should actually think of the skills that can in one way or other promote the Afness. When I graduated from the university, from the secondary school, I went back home to the village. And when I was in the village, my dad told me that now you should start farming. And he went to the market, he bought the cabbage seed and brought them at home. So we started farming. In a few months, they came grasshoppers, they start eating cabbage. And my dad asked me, like, what should we do? Because you are the one who went to school. So in the mid discussion, I told my dad, like, I was in school, yes, but I learned about parts of grasshopper, not how to prevent grasshopper from eating the cabbage. So that was something that I keep thinking about it every time, that what kind of education do we provide to our young generation? Is it the education that's going direct to solve the challenge that the young people are facing, or is it because of the syllabus that we have and it's just written in the books, we should just give the skills that way? For example, today, if you look at African continent, it's like strategically, people have already divided the continent how they wish. For example, if you look at the company that are operating in mines, all of them, they are from Canada. Look at the company that in the construction, they're from China. Look at the companies that they are operating in the weapons and supply training on the military. They're from USA. And you ask the question that when you have the schools where you are producing engineers, what do they do after? Because you never found the local companies that are given a lot of funds that they can operate in the ground. But you'll find the big companies from China, they're building railway, they're building schools, they're building, in some of the countries, they're even building the state house. While we have the entire generation of young people in the country, they went to school, but they cannot do something into their own because they only get theories, they are not practical. So the education we are getting in our education system sometimes is still challenging on how to liberate a young person. Today we'll hear more stories about the Africa raising. Yeah, the Africa is raising. But if you go outside and you make analysis, what is raising in Africa? You will see the mushrooming of industry. You will see the big airports built. You will see the huge industry invested in Africa. But if you just go in keen and look, who are the owners of the industries that is built in Africa? You'll find there are people from outside. If there are people from outside, ask yourself, these guys who are investing in Africa, what kind of jobs that the young people get in those industries? You'll find a bunch of those skilled jobs are taken from people are brought from those countries the investors they're coming from. And young people, they are working in this low-skilled labor. They are getting a return from the investment. So you cannot have you will see the big mushroom, the big industries, you will see the increase of the build of the big airports, but in the end, the people who are in the country, they are earning less. So if
Kamala is still there?
Today, if you meet the other time we were discussing in my country, you will find someone who is still in primary school is taking a big bunch of books, like 12 to 20 books on his bag, and you ask yourself, like, how can that small kid from primary school can read more than 20 books at once? So it's a kind of education that is not suitable for our environment. And I think for me, keep talking about in our syllabus, keep talking about the European history. It has nothing to do with young people in our community. You look today, if you just go to some of the countries, the way they are describing the colonialists, some of the countries will find they have even built the big statue of those colonialists that they were ruling the countries, but there is no a statue for the people within the countries that have done extraordinary work to make sure that there is a progressive in their community. So it's not only that we were colonized in mind, but we are already colonized in mind, but also in even our thinking. Because if you look on the way people think, if you look on the way people act, if you look on the way people put things in their community, you will be surprised. Because at a time I asked my I'm finishing, Professor. At a time I asked my friend, at a time I asked my friends, like, do you know any football team in South Africa or in Tanzania? Most of them, you will find they don't know what are their football team in those countries. But ask them about Arsenal, ask them about Manchester. We are so much fun of the things that they are in the other continent, and that what we feel like is very important. Like today, if I wear a T-shirt written "I love New York," I'll be more fashionable. but where I wore a garment made in Ghana, they will look me as a witch doctor. Things like those, they have killed our generation. And we need, we need to find a better way on how this young generation should love their own lifestyle and make changes. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Thank you, Kamala. I'm wearing Ghana material. I hope you don't think I'm a witch doctor. Thank you for that. All right, perfect. So we have from Malawi, Save the Children, Chembe Hope Kwazayani, who's also representing the African Philanthropy Network. Please, Chembe, provide your remarks as well to our topic and our keynote.
All right. Thank you, Sishoma. I hope I'm audible there.
Yes, you are.
Right. To take up the floor, I think I would begin to take a position whereby I'm in agreement with the rest of the speakers. But before I even go deeper, I have to recognize the presence of my mom, Dr. Stigmata Tenga. She has been one of my key inspiration from my days when I was doing my course under Pan-African Leadership Institute. So I have to recognize her presence and the entire team of panelists and all the attendees to this ceremony. To begin with, I think let me borrow the words of Dr. Stigmata, whereby she said, we are not yet there. So we need to pull our success by working together. And in the same vein, let me also borrow the words of Dr. Judy, whereby she has said that we have to be the change that we want to see in our bid to create and promote resilient education. Last but not least, let me also recognize the powerful poem by Rorebo, whereby she said, let's all rise and let excellence prevail. So departing from that angle, I would take all of you to this platform whereby I have to first of all introduce myself. My name is Chiembekezo Gwazayani. In English, it's called Hope. And I'm one of the distinguished graduates from the Pan-African Leadership Institute, PALI. And I'm here today to be part of the Pan-African Institute Network, APN, which is a network of organizations that is who are dedicated to promote and supporting philanthropy across Africa by fostering a community of philanthropists, advocating for a stronger philanthropic sector and providing capacity building programs. And it also facilitates the networking and collaboration among its members. And it also conducts research and shares knowledge on trends and best practices in African philanthropy. Additionally, APN mobilizes resources to support initiatives addressing critical issues like poverty, education, healthcare, and economic development, thereby enhancing the impact of philanthropic efforts on the continent. So to others who do not know the meaning of a philanthropy, I know others may just hear this term maybe on this platform without actually knowing what a philanthropist is. So a philanthropist is an individual who seeks to promote the welfare of others, typically through generous financial donations, volunteer efforts, and other forms of supports aimed at advancing social causes and addressing social issues. And philanthropists are often driven by a desire to create a positive change and contribute to the betterment of a society, whether through funding education, healthcare, environmental protection, poverty alleviation, and other charitable activities. And these contributions can be made personally through foundation and charitable organizations as they establish or support. So my colleagues earlier on lamented to say that we are not yet there. I have to agree with them that in our course to promote sustainable and resilient education, we are not yet there. Taking from the angle where I am here in Malawi, for example, and I would also equate the same to the rest of the African nations. You see that the syllabus that we are teaching our students is not at par with the current trends the modern industry needs. For example, in Malawi, for example, you see that the syllabus is so obsolete. For example, they teach technology that is obsolete, and the topics that are covered are outdated. They're covering technological tools and processes that are no longer used in the modern industry. And in the same vein, you see that the history itself, which is taught in schools, focuses more excessively on colonial history without sufficient emphasis on contemporary Malawi and African history achievements and the current global context. And in the agriculture sector, for example, with regards to the education itself, you see that the teaching on agriculture, it focuses more on traditional agriculture methods than the modern techniques that are used in agriculture across the globe, mostly in the advanced world. And on the language context itself, you see that extensive focus on literary works or language structure have that little practical application in everyday communication or in our current job market. And in the same vein, you see that our learners are taught outdated scientific theories that are retaining scientific concepts that have been debunked or significantly revised by the modern science. Last but not least, you see that our vocational skills, vocational training does not align with the current job market's demands. That's failing to prepare students for the available modern careers. And in my view, updating these areas to reflect current technologies, contemporary issues, modern science, understanding, and practical skills relevant to today's job market can make the syllabi more relevant and effective for students. And the case is the same with the majority of the African countries. So I think reaching this far, I think that's the reason that I can say with regards to the time. And given a chance in the course of our discussion, I'll also take you through some of the efforts that our African philanthropic organizations or African philanthropies are doing in Africa as a whole. Going back to Stigmata's point, the last point.
Can we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm wrapping up. So going up to Dr. Stigmata's point, she said that we are not yet there, but I want to add a spice on the same to say that though we are not yet there as African philanthropists, we are trying our best. And in the course of our discussion, I also present some of the achievements by our African philanthropists across Africa. Over and out.
Thank you. Thank you. You can actually post them. So all the resources that you'd like to share, please go ahead and put those on the chat if there's a link so that colleagues can access those. All right, we are reaching the end of our webinar. We do have a few minutes to interact a little bit before we close. I don't see a lot of questions. I see a lot of comments, which is great. And we also see that people are coming from different parts of Africa, which is excellent. This is being recorded, so you're able to access the video on YouTube from all of the host institutions. So you'll be able to watch this at your own pace as well. I'd like to ask Dr. Dlamini if you have any parting words before we do our conclusions and our vote of thanks. Any parting words, Dr. Dlamini?
Thanks very much, Kiratile. One, for the opportunity, but also for having a few words as my parting words. Education is a very complex subject. It's not something you can tackle in 15 minutes because it starts in early childhood until death. So it's not something, especially lifelong learning. So it's up to each one of us to actually look at, I was listening to the last speaker, Chair Bekezo, I hope I pronounced your name well, looking at how we are still using, thank you, at outdated ways of teaching. Even the first speaker, Kamala, spoke about how the teaching is not practical. When you are now supposed to use what you've learned, you are found wanting because we focus on theories. So it does matter that when we look at the education system, we are practical. And I like that in South Africa, we have a lot of problems, as we all know, but there are certain things that we're now trying to address. As someone who's passionate about entrepreneurship, if you look at the EDHE, which is entrepreneurship development at university level, we are getting it right because we're not just teaching how to be an entrepreneur and the many theories and all the models that come from the West, but we are saying do it. And how can we support you? So our education has to be practical and it has to evolve. And the best way of getting that is giving the young people the ability to use their minds as the best tool that they have. Learning and regurgitating is not going to give us resilient lifelong education. But if we give them, we empower them to solve problems, to identify problems, no matter what is thrown their way, they will adapt because they'll be able to use the mind, the tool that they have, which is the mind. So yeah, it's very important, a topic, and I'm sorry that I can only give snippets. But if nothing else, especially to the young people, just please take pride in who you are. Just remember the greatness of our forebears, and let's pass on a world that celebrates Africanness. And let's have one passport for the whole continent. No visa required, please, because as Dr. Nkosana Moyo was saying, is that if we are going to trade successfully and seamlessly, we need to be able to remove the borders that were not created by us, by the way. So we can't say we're no more colonized because we're still sitting with the borders that were done by a colonizer. So it's an emotional subject, an important subject. That's all I can say in the limited time. Thank you so much. Asante, Sanya.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Dlamini, and to all our speakers as well. We are going to wrap up now. So Mwanja from the Institution for Justice and Reconciliation will provide all the conclusions, the key points that came out today. We do see your comments as well. We will provide feedback to everyone that attended. So Mwanja, please go ahead with our conclusions and our vote of thanks, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I always like to say that for me, the 25th of May is not a day to celebrate as Africa Day, because personally, every day for me and for all of us is Africa Day. So the 25th of May is actually an opportunity for us to remember and to take pride in whom we are as Africans, that every day should be celebrated as Africa Day, regardless of the challenges that we go through. Let's continue to soldier on. And I think that's what has been coming out of the discussions this afternoon. I'll just highlight a few key takeaways from all of our speakers this afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Kira, for setting the theme for us at the beginning of the program in pointing out that the theme for the African Union this year is Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century. And this is actually embedded in SDG 4. And quality education is what we should all strive towards. Dr. Nkosana Moyo, as usual, we could just sit at your feet the whole time and just glean from you the pearls of wisdom that you have to share with the rest of the continent. Dr. Nkosana Moyo made a point for the fact that we need to make Pan-Africanism a living reality. And we're lacking in so many ways in that we like to create barriers for ourselves, which are not really necessary. Therefore, he pushed for a strong living Africa and breaking down of barriers that we like to set up for ourselves all over the continent. And Dr. Professor T. Murithi from the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation pointed to the fact that IJR has been, for the last 2 decades, pushing for and working towards the area of education and building capacities. And he made a case for the fact that peace education should actually be one of the strongest pillars for us in Africa when it comes to building Pan-Africanism that Dr. Nkosana Moyo alluded to. And we also heard from Dr. Bekinkosi Moyo, who made the case for students in all our institutions to actually transform the continent for the better. And he took us back in history when he pointed out that the 1979 Monrovia Declaration on Self-Reliance is a basis through which we can take off. And Dr. Tenga pointed out that we need to keep working together through partnerships for lifelong learning. And it starts with the liberation of the mind, because once we're liberated in our thinking through our education, that will free us to be innovative and to be more creative. And Dr. Judy Dlamini, our keynote speaker, also started off with a great quote by Emperor Haile Selassie, who said, we must become bigger than we have been. And therefore, through this setting in us growing bigger and bigger every day, our education system should not take us backwards, but only forwards. And therefore, she said that education starts by loving yourself, knowing who you are, and taking pride in your Africanism and also in your history and culture. And then the respondents, we had a lovely, lovely performance by Relebohile, who said, give the African youth a light, give them education, turn the light on. And I think Relebohile, I see in the comments that you should actually share this poem with others. I don't know if you can post it online as well. And Nokukanya said that the key takeaway for me is the quote that when an African elder dies, it symbolizes the burning of a library. Therefore, let's find ways in which we can include indigenous African education in our own current education systems. And Kamala Dixon, I think I listened to him last year as well. He keeps on taking us back to the important point of us actually making our education practical. Let's not get bogged up in theories, but let's build on education system that has got practicability. And Chiembekezo also set the case for the role of philanthropists in ensuring that we build a better and resilient education systems which are currently failing. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much more. It feels like we've only just started scratching the surface. And like I said, let's continue having these forums where we leverage on one another's strength in order for us to learn. I would like to end my concluding remarks by giving a vote of thanks to all our participants this afternoon that have joined us from different corners, not just of the continent, but different corners of the world as well. We see you, we acknowledge you, and we're grateful for your presence. I would like to thank all our partners, starting with our keynote speaker, Dr. Judy Dlamini, as well as the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, the Southern Africa Youth Forum, the Africa Philanthropy Network, Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, as well as the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment at Wits Business School that often bring us together like this every year. And from CAPSI, I would like to single out Kosiame, as well as Alison, who've been working in the background, ensuring that we have a seamless event today. Thank you very much. Happy Africa Month and happy Africa Day every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manja. All right, colleagues, we're at the end of our webinar today. The video will be available to all of you, and please let us not become strangers to one another. This is a community, so you can contact any of the organizers, any of the partners today to get access to the recordings for today. We look forward to seeing you, and let's wear t-shirts. I love Dar es Salaam. I love Johannesburg, and happy Africa Day to everyone. Thank you, Jayton.